I didn't survive that night. Someone decided I should. The first thing I remember was the sound of my own breathing, uneven, chewed inging against the silence of a room that didn't belong to me. My lungs burned like I had swallowed the ocean, and when I opened my eyes, the ceiling above me was too white, too clean, too far from the rain and chaos. I still felt trapped inside. I tried to move, but something held me in place, not restraints, not force, just a hand wrapped firmly around mine, warm, unyielding, like it had been there longer than I had been conscious. I turned my head slowly, every inch of my body heavy, and that's when I saw him, tall, still, dressed in darkness like it was tailored just for him. His eyes were already on me, watching, not surprised, not relieved, just certain. "You're awake," he said, his voice low, controlled, like he had already decided how this moment would go. I tried to pull my hand back. Instinct, fear, something deeper telling me this man was not safe, but his grip tightened just enough to stop me without hurting. "Where am I?" My voice came out cracked, unfamiliar, like it didn't belong to me anymore. He didn't answer right away, just studied me like I was a question he already knew the answer to. And then, quietly, "Alive." The word hit harder than anything else, because suddenly it all came rushing back, the rain slamming against my windshield, the blurred red lights ahead, the way my hands shook on the steering wheel as I checked the mirror again and again. His car still behind me, always behind me, getting closer. I pressed the gas harder, my old engine whining like it couldn't keep up with the panic in my chest. "Just get home," I whispered to myself. But home felt miles away, unreachable, the bridge rising ahead like the only path forward, slick with rain, glowing under streetlights that flickered in the storm. I didn't see him until it was too late, his headlights suddenly beside me. Too close, too fast. My heart dropped before my car did. Metal screamed. The world tilted. And for one endless second, everything slowed. The road disappeared beneath me, replaced by darkness, by the sound of water waiting below. I remember the weightlessness, the silence before impact, and then cold. Swallowing. Absolute. The water rushed in faster than I could think, faster than I could breathe. My chest tightened, my fingers clawed at nothing. And I knew this was where it ended. No more running, no more fighting, just sinking, fading, letting go, until something stopped me. A hand, firm, unshakable, cutting through the dark and wrapping around mine like a promise I didn't ask for. I gasped back into the present, my fingers tightening instinctively around his. And he didn't move, didn't flinch, like he had been waiting for that exact moment. "You should have died," he said, not cruel, not cold, just stating a fact. My breath caught, my heart pounding again for a completely different reason. "But you didn't." His thumb pressed lightly against my pulse, like he was confirming it himself, like my life was something he was still deciding. I swallowed hard, trying to find strength in a body that didn't feel like mine. "I want to leave," I whispered, the words weak but real. And for the first time, something shifted in his expression, not anger, not surprise, something quieter, more dangerous. His grip didn't loosen, not even slightly. "No," he said simply, like it wasn't up for discussion, like the world outside this room no longer had any claim on me. My heart raced, fear mixing with something I couldn't name, something that felt too close to inevitability. I didn't know who he was, didn't know why he saved me, didn't know why he was still holding my hand like. Letting go was never an option, but deep down, beneath the confusion and the fear, one truth settled in, heavy and undeniable. I didn't just survive that fall, I was taken from it. And now, whatever came next was no longer mine to choose. His hand did not move even after I said it. Not a single inch. Like my words had no weight here. Like they had never mattered in this room. I swallowed and forced myself to sit up, the world tilting slightly as a dull ache spread through my chest, reminding me of the water, the fall, the moment everything had almost ended. But he stayed steady beside me, his grip the only thing that felt solid. "You cannot leave yet," he said, calm, controlled, like he was explaining something obvious, something I should already understand. I shook my head, my pulse quickening under his thumb. "I have a life," I whispered, though even as I said it, the words felt fragile, distant, like they belonged to someone else. His eyes narrowed just slightly, not in anger, but in assessment, like he was measuring the truth of what I had just said. You had a life, he corrected quietly, and something in my chest tightened at the past tense. I pulled harder this time, and he finally let go, but not because I won, because he chose to, his hand, dropping to his side with deliberate control, like everything about him was a decision, nothing accidental. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, my feet touching the cold floor, grounding me, reminding me I was still here, still real. I need my phone, I said, my voice steadier now, clinging to something normal, something familiar. But he did not move, did not reach for anything. Instead, he watched me, silent for a moment too long. There is no one you need to call, he said, and the certainty in his voice sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the room temperature. That is not your decision. I shot back, anger flickering through the fear, something stubborn rising inside me. Because whatever this was, whoever he was, he did not get to decide my life for me. Not after everything. Not after what I had just escaped. His gaze sharpened, and for the first time, I saw something darker beneath the control. Not cruelty, not chaos, but power, quiet and absolute. The kind that did not need to prove itself. You think you escaped, he said slowly, stepping closer, not threatening, just inevitable, like gravity, like the tide pulling back in. But you were never the one in control. My breath caught, my mind flashing back to the bridge, to the headlights, to the moment my car had been forced too close to the edge, to the realization that it had not been an accident. Not really. I looked up at him, searching his face for answers I was not sure I wanted. You know about him, I said, the words barely more than a breath. And he did not deny it, did not pretend otherwise. I know enough, he replied, his voice dropping lower, more dangerous in its quiet than any raised tone could have been. Enough to know that if you walk out that door, you will not make it a mile. Silence filled the space between us, heavy, suffocating. And for the first time since I woke up, the fear shifted, not away from him, but towards something else, something outside this room, something that had already tried to take everything from me once. I wrapped my arms around myself, the memory of cold water still clinging to my skin. So what? I said, forcing the words out, forcing myself to meet his eyes. I am supposed to stay here because you say so? His expression did not change, but his answer came without hesitation. You are supposed to stay because I am the only reason you are still breathing. The truth of it landed hard, undeniable, and I hated how much it made sense, hated how much of me understood that walking away might mean falling again, this time with no one there to reach for me. He stepped back then, giving me space that did not feel like freedom, more like a boundary I had not yet learned how to cross. Rest, he said, his tone softer now, but no less firm. You will need your strength. I watched him as he turned toward the door, his presence lingering even as the distance between us grew, and just before he left, he paused, his hand resting briefly against the frame. You are safe here, he added, and something about the way he said it made my heart beat faster, not slower. Because deep down, I was starting to realize that safe did not mean free, and as the door closed behind him, one thought echoed louder than the rest. I had escaped the water, but I had not escaped him, and I was no longer sure which one was more dangerous. I did not sleep after he left. I lay there staring at the ceiling while the silence pressed in around me. Too quiet, too controlled, like even the air in this place followed his rules. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it again. The drop, the cold, the moment my breath had disappeared, and then his hand, pulling me back, steady, certain, like he had reached into something final and decided I was not allowed to stay there. I pushed myself up slowly, ignoring the protest in my body, and looked around the room for the first time. Really looked, everything was precise, clean lines, dark wood, soft lighting, nothing out of place, nothing personal, like a space designed for function, not comfort. I spotted my clothes folded neatly on a chair across the room, dry, untouched, like someone had handled them carefully, deliberately. I hesitated before standing, my legs unsteady at first, but they held, step by step across the cold floor until I reached them. The fabric felt familiar in my hands, grounding, a reminder that I still belonged somewhere outside of this place, outside of him. I dressed quickly, my movements quiet, instinct telling me not to draw attention even though I had no idea who else was here. The door stood a few feet away, closed but not locked, at least not visibly. I stared at it for a long moment, my heart picking up. This was my chance, if he was right. If what he said about danger was true, then leaving might be a mistake. But staying felt worse. Staying meant giving up control completely. And I had already lost too much. I reached for the handle slowly, half expecting something to stop me. But nothing did. The metal was cool under my fingers, and with a quiet breath, I turned it. The door opened without resistance, revealing a long hallway lined with the same muted elegance, soft lights, dark floors, silence that felt intentional. I stepped out, the door closing behind me with a soft click that echoed louder than it should have. The space stretched in both directions, empty at first glance, but the further I looked, the more I noticed subtle details, cameras tucked into corners, doors placed at precise intervals, everything watched, everything controlled. I moved carefully, each step measured, my pulse steady but alert, following the hallway toward what looked like a wider open area ahead. The faint sound of voices reached me before I saw anyone, low, controlled, like conversations that were never meant to be overheard. I slowed, instinct telling me to stop, to turn back, but I did not. I edged closer until the space opened into a large living area, and that was when I saw them. 3 men standing near a table, all dressed in dark suits, their posture rigid, their attention focused on something in front of them. And then he was there, not entering, not arriving, just already present, standing at the center like everything naturally aligned around him. Adrian. He did not raise his voice, did not gesture dramatically, but the moment he spoke, the others listened, every word carrying weight without effort. I froze where I stood, half hidden by the wall, watching him, studying the way he moved, the way he commanded without needing to prove it. This was not just a man who saved me. This was a man who controlled entire rooms without trying. And suddenly his words from earlier echoed louder in my mind. You will not make it a mile. I took a step back, my breath catching as realization settled deeper. This place was not just somewhere I had been taken. It was somewhere no one left without permission. And as if he felt it, as if he always knew exactly where I was, Adrian turned his head slightly, his eyes finding mine instantly across the distance. No surprise, no hesitation, just recognition. Like he had expected me to be there all along. My heart skipped, my body going still under that gaze. And even from across the room, I felt it again. That same unspoken claim, not loud, not forced, but undeniable. I was not just being protected here, I was being watched, and the difference between those two things was starting to blur in ways I was not ready to understand. I should have looked away the moment his eyes found mine, but I did not. I could not. Something about the way he held my gaze made it feel like moving would be a mistake, like stepping out of line in a place where lines were not visible, but always enforced. The men around him followed his attention almost instantly, their heads turning in quiet synchronization until they saw me standing there, uninvited, out of place. One of them shifted slightly, not aggressive, but aware, like my presence had already been noted, cataloged, and assessed. And then Adrian moved, just one step forward, but it was enough to change the entire atmosphere of the room. The others stepped back without being told, giving him space like it was instinct, like it had been trained into them over time. My breath caught as he started walking toward me, not fast, not slow, just certain, each step measured, deliberate, closing the distance between us with a quiet kind of authority that made it impossible to ignore. I told myself to move, to turn, to go back the way I came, but my feet stayed rooted, my body betraying me in the same way it had when I first woke up. Like some part of me already understood that running here meant nothing. You should be resting, he said as he stopped a few feet away, his voice calm, almost soft, but underneath it was that same unyielding control. I forced myself to hold his gaze, refusing to let fear take over completely. And you should not be watching me, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. A flicker of something passed through his eyes, not irritation, not quite approval, something harder to define. Like I had said something unexpected but not unwelcome. Everything in this house is watched, he said simply. And the way he said house made it clear that this place was more than just a temporary shelter. It was his, entirely. That includes you. The words settled over me slowly, not a threat, just a fact. And somehow that made it worse. I crossed my arms instinctively, trying to create some kind of barrier between us. Even if it was meaningless, I opened the door, I said, pushing the point. No one stopped me. He tilted his head slightly, studying me again with that same calculating calm. And yet, you are still here, he replied. And I hated how true that was. Hated that I had walked out and somehow ended up deeper inside instead of closer to leaving. I glanced past him briefly, noticing how the other men had already returned to their positions, their attention no longer on us, but their presence still there, still part of whatever world this was. What is this place? I asked, my voice lower now, more careful, because I could feel it, the weight of the question, the line I was stepping toward. Adrian did not answer right away, his silence stretching just long enough to make me question whether he would answer at all. And then, it is where you are safe, he said, the same word again, safe, but it sounded different this time, heavier, layered with meaning I could not fully grasp. I shook my head slightly, frustration building under the surface. You keep saying that like it explains everything, I said. It does not. His gaze sharpened just a fraction, and he stepped closer, not invading, but close enough that I could feel the shift in the air between us. You want explanations, he said quietly, but you are not asking the right question. My breath slowed, my focus narrowing on him. Then tell me what I should be asking, I challenged, and for a brief moment, something almost like a shadow crossed his expression, not doubt, not hesitation, just something deeper, more personal. You should be asking why you are still alive, he said, his voice lower now, almost intimate in its intensity. The words hit harder than I expected, because I had been avoiding that question, pushing it aside, focusing on everything else, anything else. But he was right. I had not truly faced it. Not yet. My throat tightened slightly as I held his gaze. And the answer? I asked, barely above a whisper. Adrian did not look away, did not soften. Because I was there, he said, simple, absolute, like no other explanation was needed. And in that moment, standing in a place I did not understand with a man I could not read, one truth settled in with quiet certainty. My life had changed the second his hand found mine in the water, and whatever came next was already unfolding under his control whether I accepted it or not. His words stayed with me long after he stepped back, not loud, not forceful, but impossible to ignore, because they were true in a way I did not want to admit. I was still alive because he had been there, and somehow that made everything more complicated, not less. I looked away first, breaking the tension that had built between us, my thoughts racing faster than I could organize them. I needed space, needed distance from him, from this place, from the way everything felt like it was slowly closing in around me. I need air, I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended, but he did not react, did not question it. He simply turned slightly and gestured down the hallway behind me. There is a terrace, he said, his voice returning to that calm, controlled tone, like nothing we had just said carried any weight for him at all. I hesitated for half a second, waiting for a condition, a warning, something that would remind me I was not actually free to move, but none came, and that unsettled me more than if he had stopped me outright. I turned and walked back the way I had come, my steps quicker now, not running, but close enough that it felt like escape. Even if I knew it was not, the hallway seemed longer this time, quieter, like the walls themselves were watching me leave. I followed the direction he had pointed until I found the door at the end, glass this time, leading out onto a wide terrace overlooking the city. I pushed it open and stepped outside, the cool air hitting my face instantly, sharp and grounding. I inhaled deeply, my lungs still sensitive but grateful. The skyline stretched out in front of me. Endless lights, movement, life continuing like nothing had happened, like I had not almost disappeared from it completely just hours ago. I gripped the railing lightly, steadying myself as I took it all in. This was real. All of it. The fall, the water, him. I was not imagining any of it, and that realization settled heavily in my chest. Because if this was real, then so was everything he had said. I was not safe out there. Not yet. Not while the person who had chased me was still somewhere in that city, still breathing the same air I was now trying to reclaim. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the breeze move through my hair, trying to find some sense of control again, some piece of myself that had not been taken by everything that had happened. You are thinking about leaving, His voice came from behind me, low, certain, and I did not need to turn to know he was there. I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening slightly on the railing. Of course I am, I said, opening my eyes again, staring out at the lights instead of at him. This is not my life. I heard his footsteps approach, slow, deliberate, until he stopped beside me, close enough that I could feel his presence without him touching me. It is now, he said, not as a threat, not as a command, just a statement that landed with quiet force. I turned my head then, looking at him directly, searching his expression for something human, something uncertain, anything that suggested he did not fully believe his own words. But there was nothing, just that same calm certainty, like the outcome had already been decided and I was simply catching up to it. You do not get to decide that, I said, my voice softer now, but no less firm. He held my gaze, unblinking, and for a moment, the world beyond the terrace seemed to disappear, leaving only the space between us. I already did, he replied, and something about the way he said it made my heart skip, not out of fear this time, but because part of me recognized the truth behind it, not just in his words, but in everything that had led to this moment, the fall, the rescue, the way my path had shifted without my permission. I looked back out at the city again, the distance between where I stood and where I had been feeling impossibly wide, and for the first time, I realized that leaving was not just about walking out of this place. It was about stepping back into a life that might no longer exist the way I remembered it. And as the wind moved around us, carrying the sounds of a world I was no longer sure I belonged to, one thought settled quietly but firmly in my mind. Surviving had been the easy part. Figuring out what came after was going to be the real challenge, especially with him standing beside me. Already acting like he was part of it, the wind did not calm the thoughts in my head. It only made them louder, sharper, like every question I had been avoiding was now impossible to ignore. I stayed there at the railing, staring out at the city while his words settled into something heavier than I wanted to admit. It is now. He had said it like it was already decided, like my life had shifted without asking for my permission, and part of me hated that. But another part, quieter, more dangerous, wondered if he was right. I tightened my grip on the cold metal, grounding myself in something real, something I could control. You talk like everything belongs to you, I said finally, my voice steady but edged with something that felt like defiance. This place, this situation, me. I turned slightly, enough to see him from the corner of my eye, his expression unchanged, unreadable in a way that felt intentional. I do not talk, he replied calmly. I act. The simplicity of it sent a strange tension through me, because it was not arrogance, it was certainty, the kind that came from never being proven wrong. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding, shaking my head slightly. That does not make it right, I said, and this time I fully faced him, forcing myself not to look away, not to shrink under the weight of his presence. You cannot just decide someone stays. His gaze held mine, steady, unflinching, and for a moment, the world narrowed again to just the space between us. If I had not decided, he said quietly, you would not be standing here arguing with me. The words were not harsh, not raised, but they landed with a precision that made it hard to push back. I opened my mouth, ready to respond, to fight it, but nothing came out, because he was right, again, and I hated how often that seemed to be happening. I looked away first this time, breaking the connection before it pulled me in any further. That does not mean you own what happens next, I said, softer now, but no less certain. He did not answer immediately, and that silence stretched longer than before, heavy, deliberate, like he was choosing his next words carefully. No, he said finally, and something in his tone shifted, just slightly. It means I am responsible for it. I blinked, caught off guard by the change, by the difference between ownership and responsibility. It was subtle, but it mattered. I studied him more closely now, searching for something I had missed before, something beneath the control and certainty, and for the first time, I saw it. Not clearly, not fully, but enough to recognize it. Intention, not just to control, but to protect. The realization unsettled me more than anything else had so far, because it complicated everything, made it harder to label him as simply dangerous or simply safe. He was both, in ways I did not yet understand. I did not ask for that. I said quietly. The fight's still there, but softer now, less certain. He nodded once, like he had expected that answer. No, he agreed. But you needed it. I shook my head again. But this time it felt weaker, less convincing, because deep down, I knew he was not entirely wrong. I had needed help. I had needed someone to reach into that darkness and pull me out. But that did not mean I owed him my future, my choices, my life. There has to be a line, I said, more to myself than to him. Somewhere, he watched me for a moment, then stepped closer, not enough to trap me, but enough that I felt the shift again, that quiet pressure of his presence. There is, he said, his voice lower now, more focused, and you are standing on it. My breath caught slightly at the weight of those words, because suddenly it felt real, the choice I was facing, not just stay or leave, but trust or resist, accept or fight, and I did not know which one would cost me more. I looked back out at the city one more time, the lights stretching endlessly into the distance, and for the first time, they did not feel like freedom, they felt uncertain, distant, like something I was no longer sure I could reach the same way again. And as the silence settled between us once more, I realized something that made my chest tighten. This was not just about surviving anymore. It was about deciding who I was going to become after everything that had happened, and whether I liked it or not. He was already part of that decision. The silence after his words did not feel empty. It felt charged, like something unseen had shifted between us, and neither of us was willing to name it first. I stayed where I was for a moment longer, my fingers loosening from the railing as I tried to steady the thoughts in my head. There is a line, he had said, and you were standing on it. I did not like how true that felt, did not like that I could feel it too, that invisible edge between the life I knew and whatever this was becoming. I turned away from the city slowly, forcing myself to face him again, to face the reality of the situation instead of hiding behind distance and lights. And what happens if I cross it? I asked, my voice quieter now, but sharper in its intent. His gaze did not waver, did not soften, but there was something new there, something more focused, like he had been waiting for that question. That depends on which direction you choose, he replied, calm as ever, like the answer was simple even when it felt anything but. I let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but without any humor. You make it sound like I still have a choice, I said, and for the first time, he did not answer immediately. The pause was brief, but noticeable, enough to make something in my chest tighten with uncertainty. You always have a choice, he said finally, and there was something different in his tone, not softer, but more deliberate, like he meant it in a way he had not meant anything else so far. I studied him carefully, searching for the angle, the condition, the hidden rule behind that statement. But his expression remained the same, controlled, unreadable. Then say it clearly, I pressed, stepping closer this time, closing some of the space between us on my own terms. If I walk out of here right now, what happens? His eyes held mine, steady, unblinking, and for a moment, the air felt heavier, like the answer carried more weight than either of us was saying out loud. You walk into a situation you do not fully understand, he said, his voice low, measured, and I will not be there to reach for you again. The words settled over me slowly, not a threat, not a warning meant to scare me into staying, just a statement of fact, and somehow that made it harder to dismiss. I felt my pulse pick up, the memory of that moment in the water flashing through my mind again. The darkness, the stillness, the sudden presence of his hand pulling me back. I swallowed, pushing the image away. And if I stay? I asked, my voice almost steady. Almost. He did not hesitate this time. Then you stay under my protection, he said. And there it was again, that word, protection. But now it felt heavier, more defined, like it came with terms I had not yet seen. I crossed my arms slightly, holding onto the last piece of resistance I had. And what does that cost me? I asked, because I knew there was always a cost. There was always a balance somewhere. Nothing like this came without it. His gaze sharpened just slightly, not in anger, but in recognition, like I had finally asked the right question. Your trust, he said simply, the answer catching me off guard in a way I had not expected. I blinked, my mind trying to process it, because I had expected something else, something more tangible, more controlling. But trust, that was different. That was something I could not give easily, something I had already learned to protect long before this night. That is not Something you can demand, I said quietly, my voice steady but guarded. He nodded once, like he agreed with that completely. I am not demanding it, he replied. I am telling you that without it, none of this works. The honesty in his words unsettled me more than anything else he had said so far, because it did not feel like manipulation, it felt like truth, and I did not know what to do with that. I looked away for a moment, my thoughts spinning, weighing everything, the danger outside, the control inside, the unknown in both directions. And for the first time since I woke up, I realized that the choice in front of me was not simple at all. It was not about staying or leaving. It was about deciding who I was willing to trust when everything else had already proven unreliable. I looked back at him slowly, meeting his gaze again, and something inside me shifted, not fully, not completely, but enough to change the way I stood, the way I breathed. And if I choose not to trust you, I asked, one final time, needing to hear it, needing to understand where that path led. Adrian did not look away, did not hesitate. Then you will have to trust yourself, he said, and for the first time, there was something almost like respect in his voice, something that made my chest tighten in a completely different way, because suddenly the choice did not feel like a trap, it felt like a test. And I was no longer sure which answer would change everything more his answer did not give me. Clarity. It gave me something worse, responsibility, the kind that settled deep and refused to be ignored. I stood there for a long moment, caught between two versions of myself, the one who had always relied on her own judgment, and the one who had just been pulled out of something she could not escape alone. And for the first time, I realized those two versions were no longer separate. They were colliding, forcing me to choose which one I trusted more. I looked at him again, really looked this time, not just at the control or the quiet authority, but at the stillness behind it, the patience, the way he was not pushing me toward an answer, just waiting for it, like he already knew that whatever I chose, I would have to live with it fully. You are not trying to stop me, I said slowly, testing the reality of it. His expression did not change, but there was a shift in his posture, subtle, almost imperceptible, like he was giving me space without stepping back. No, he said, and that single word carried more weight than anything else he had said so far, because it meant the choice was real, not controlled, not manipulated, real. And that made it harder, not easier. I glanced toward the door that led back. Inside, the path I had taken to get here, then back out at the city beyond the terrace, the path that led away from all of this. Both directions felt uncertain. Both came with consequences I could not fully see yet. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself, trying to listen to something deeper than fear, something more honest. You said I would not make it a mile, I said, my voice quieter now, more grounded. He nodded once, not confirming, not emphasizing, just acknowledging. And you would not be there to reach for me again, I added, repeating his words back to him. He did not interrupt, did not correct me, just watched, waiting. I swallowed, my thoughts aligning slowly into something clearer, something I could finally hold on to. Then this is not really about leaving, I said, more to myself than to him. It is about timing. His gaze sharpened slightly, interest flickering beneath the calm. Explain, he said. And for the first time, I felt like I was not reacting, I was deciding. If I leave now, I walk into something I am not ready for. I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word. But if I stay, I hesitated for a fraction of a second, not because I did not know what came next, but because saying it out loud made it real. If I stay, I learn. The word hung between us, simple, but heavy with meaning. His eyes held mine, steady, assessing, and then he gave the smallest nod, not approval, not victory, just acknowledgement, like I had reached a conclusion he had expected me to find on my own. Then you stay, he said, his voice quiet. But there was something different in it now, something less rigid, more aligned with what I had just said. I felt something shift inside me. At that, not surrender, not acceptance, something else, something closer to control returning in a different form. I was not staying because he forced me. I was staying because I chose to understand before I walked away, and that distinction mattered more than I expected. I straightened slightly, my shoulders settling as the tension in my chest eased just enough to breathe properly again. But this does not mean I trust you, I added, needing to say it, needing to keep that boundary clear. His response was immediate, without hesitation. I know. And for some reason, that did not feel like a challenge. It felt like an agreement, like he understood exactly where I stood and was not trying to change it yet. I looked at him one last time before turning back toward the door, the decision settling into place with a quiet certainty I had not felt since before the bridge, before the fall, before everything changed. And as I stepped back inside, leaving the open air behind me, one thought stayed with me, steady and undeniable. I was not trapped here, not anymore. I was choosing to stay, and that meant whatever happened next, I would face it on my terms. Even if he was standing right beside me when I did the moment I stepped back inside, something shifted again, not around me, but within me. The hesitation that had followed me since I woke up began to settle into something more solid, more deliberate. I was no longer reacting to him, to this place, to what had happened. I was choosing how to move forward, and that difference changed everything. I walked down the hallway with steadier steps this time, aware of the cameras, the quiet structure of the space, but no longer shrinking from it. I was observing now, learning, exactly like I had said I would. When I reached the room where I had woken up, the door was still open, untouched, waiting. I paused for a second before stepping inside, taking in the details again with a different perspective, the placement of everything, the precision, the absence of anything unnecessary. It was not just control, it was intention, and that made me look at him differently, not as someone who acted without thought, but as someone who planned every outcome before it happened. I turned his eye, heard his footsteps behind me, slower this time, not following, just arriving, like he trusted that I would come back, and I realized he probably had. "You came back," he said, not surprised, just stating it. I met his gaze evenly, no hesitation this time. "I said I would stay," I replied, and there was something in my voice now that had not been there before, certainty, not about him, not yet, but about myself. His eyes held mine for a moment longer, and then he nodded once, like that was enough, like he did not need anything more than that. "Then we begin," he said, and the words sent a quiet tension through me. Not fear, not resistance, something sharper, more focused. "Begin what?" I asked, because if I was staying, if I was choosing this path, then I needed to understand what I was stepping into. He moved slightly, gesturing toward the chair near the window. Not a command, not a demand, just direction. I hesitated for half a second before sitting, my posture straight, alert, ready. He remained standing for a moment, watching me, assessing, like he was deciding where to start. And then, "Everything you think you know about your situation," he said slowly, "is incomplete." My breath stilled slightly at that, because I had already suspected it, already felt the gaps in what I understood, but hearing it confirmed made it real in a different way. "Start with what matters," I said, my voice steady. My focus locked on him. He did not look away, did not soften. "The person who forced you off that bridge," he began, and even though his tone remained controlled, something in the air shifted, heavier now, more serious. "He is not acting alone." The words settled over me like a slow realization, one that made everything feel larger, more complex than I had allowed myself to believe. My fingers tightened slightly against the fabric of the chair, but I did not interrupt, did not break eye contact. "You were not just being followed," he continued. "You were being watched." A chill moved through me at that, subtle but undeniable, because it meant this was not random, not personal in the way I had thought. It was something else, something bigger. I swallowed, forcing myself to stay grounded, to stay present. "Why?" I asked, the question sharper than before, more urgent. He studied me for a moment, like he was measuring how much I was ready to hear. And then, "That is what we are going to find out," he said, and for the first time, the situation felt less like something that had happened to me, and more like something I was now part of, actively, deliberately. I leaned back slightly, processing everything, the weight of it settling in layers. This was not just about survival anymore, not just about escaping what had happened on that bridge. It was about understanding it, confronting it, and somehow, I had stepped into the center of it without realizing it. I looked at him again, really looked, and something inside me shifted once more. Not trust, not yet, but alignment, a recognition that whatever this was, whatever I had just walked into, he was already in it, already navigating it, and now, so was I. "Then we start now," I said, my voice quiet but firm. And for the first time since I had woken up in that room, I felt something. Close to clarity, not about the outcome, not about him, but about myself. I was no longer just the girl who fell. I was the one who got back up. And as his gaze held mine with that same unshakable certainty, one thought settled in with quiet finality. I did not know where this path would lead, but I knew one thing for sure. I was not walking it alone anymore.